But and then it really also gets into, is this race in the sport of mushing getting too sissified, getting too urban? Like Susie Rogan was writing in, she's a handler for Hans Guy, and on the Craig Madrid article, I'm just wondering, is it and she was basically arguing that she thought that the race should have more structured mandatory rest. And like, this discussion comes up all the time. But one of the issues with the mandatory rest breaks in the Quest and Iditarod, specifically Iditarod, since that's the race we're talking about, that 24-hour break, everyone cuts rest. They shorten their dog's rest on the layovers that they take along the trail and the checkpoints on the way to like the 24, or on the way to the 8-hour layover on the Yukon River, or the 8-hour mandatory layover that's structured into the race out there on the coast. So they basically cut rest on the way, so more mandatory rest might just gyp the dogs and make it just more structured, and remove that elbow room for strategy, for innovative strategy out there on the trail. So my almost argument is the inverse of Susie Rogan, and I was saying, well, let's just totally wipe out that 24. Let's have like no mandatory rest in the race. Would the mushers and the dogs have a more consistent run rest schedule over the 1,000 miles or 900 miles, whatever it is, because they're not racing into those mandatory layovers, and that kind of thing. So I think, that's definitely a way to look at it. We had that 1-year test with the sweepstakes, but it was a very isolated test for that type of a race. And then that's you couldn't drop dogs. There's lots of other rules that were problematic with that. But I really think, we need to really, intellectually, look at that and the strategy ramifications and the dog care ramifications of those mandatory rest breaks at some point. And it would be very healthy and interesting, I think, to do a trial year, in terms of race design, and just take out the 24. I think it'd be better for the dogs. In other words, like the year I was in the Quest, I was running 4 on, 4 off, and I did, going into that on the way up to the 36th, roughly, I did a couple of things differently, but I was resting a lot on the trail. Very young yearling team, and they were phenomenal. But when coming off that 36, obviously, I got robbed out there at the Checkpoint Eagle, by whoever took my stuff in my drop bags in the middle of nowhere, then had to go 150 miles to circle. But the point is, what I mean, the dogs benefit from a consistency in a schedule, and when you have mandatory rest breaks, it makes it less conducive for a musher to have that consistency with equal rest. So